Unless you come to a meeting like this, you would never understand that it is a formulated plan. It is not by accident. Now, what did we do in our country? We got rid of the Labor government. We thought they'd made a mistake. So out with them. We bring the national government in, and we find that they do exactly what the Labor government did. Of course they do, because they are bound to conditionalities policies. You people over here, you had an election the other day. Mr. Houston was going to give you GST. We stayed up late at night and watched it because we're 2 hours ahead of you, you see. So when they were putting it on your television, we had to wait up very late to see what's going on. So we did. It was all broadcast over there. We saw what happened. And the people didn't want, particularly Mr. Keating, to stay in power in many cases, but it was the choice of either GST or the Labor government, as it was before. They said no to GST and apparently got Mr. Keating again. Now, nobody is satisfied around the country. They all want a group that will come in and change things, but they can't, because the policies are already signed and sealed. Our only hope is to get a good relationship with God and start to live on a different realm and a different plane, our spiritual plane, where we begin to enjoy life through the power of Jesus Christ. He is fully God. He is Jesus, the man that was created by God, and he is the Christ, the anointed one. Fully God, fully man, and the only one who can save us from our sins. That's his name, Lord Jesus Christ. And if you want to chase devils, use that name. That moves them along, I tell you. In our country, and in your country, we used to have things called government departments. Who remembers those happy days we had government departments? where everything used to run very slowly, but very happily. There was no stress and there was no tension. Do you remember those days? Now, these government departments were a bit like that. They're a bit laid back. So we saw one day, we woke up and we saw a new word in the newspaper, and the word was corporatization. And all the unlearned people said to those who were learned, what does that big word mean? And all the clever people said, oh, that word means that they're going to take the power out of the hands of the government and put it into corporations. And all the people in Australia said, and New Zealand, oh, good. Less government control must be good for us. We wake up a few mornings later, we see a new word comes out in the paper. The word is privatization. And all the people who don't know what it means says to those that did, what does that mean? And all the clever people show their knowledge by saying it means this. It is taking the power further out of the hands of the government and putting it in private hands. And all the people in Australia and New Zealand said, oh, good. Then we go to bed and we get up again, having been in and out of bed a few times in the meantime. And we wake up and we see a new word in the paper, and the word is shares. We begin to smell a rat at that point, and we go, sniff, sniff. We write letters urgently to our government members. We say, we are very nervous. We say, you are issuing shares, and we are frightened overseas people will buy into our country. And your government member writes you back and says this, don't worry about a thing. Everything is under control. We are only issuing shares at 49% overseas. We will keep the major shareholding at 51%, and all the Aussies and New Zealanders said, oh, good. Remember, the key word is gradualism. We wake up a few mornings later, and what do we see? The shares have then gone up to 51% overseas, and at that point, overseas people come in and buy up all the stuff that my grandfather and your grandfather paid for in the government department. They lose everything. Lock, stock and barrel is sold overseas, and we never see it again, ever. It's gone for good. You say, is this happening all over the world? Yes. You go to the United States of America, listen to what they've sold over there. The Rockefeller Center has gone to the Japanese. Universal Studios has gone to the Japanese. Go to Pebble Beach, California, next to Monterey. They've sold up the golf course there to the Japanese. I was preaching down in Texas, and a man ran in off the street, and he said, guess what's gone now? I said, what? He said, 7-Eleven is now owned by the Japanese. And you'll find the Australians and the English and the New Zealanders and the Arabs are coming in all over the world, buying and buying and buying. Everybody's buying into everybody's country, so everybody loses their assets, and once you lose your assets, you've lost your nationality ultimately, because there's nothing to hold you together. In came Bill Clinton And some of you say, is Bill Clinton a world government man? Answer, yes, he is. He has also been trained up in world government principles, for he was a Rhodes Scholar, very like Bob Hawke, your ex-Prime Minister. Anybody who is a Rhodes Scholar is trained in international thinking, in globalism, and Bill Clinton has been trained along that line. Secondly, Bill Clinton has been attending the Bilderbergers meeting, which are the world government people who meet in Europe regularly, and he was a participant in the latest round of the Bilderbergers talks. And also, number three, he has been studying the works of a man called Carroll Quigley, a professor. This man, Carroll Quigley, wrote a book called Tragedy and Hope, and he himself was involved in the one world government system. And Bill Clinton, when he made his inaugural speech, used esoteric language. This is what he said: "Eye has not seen, ear has not heard, neither has it entered into the heart of man what we can do for you." Now, what does that mean? You take a Bible verse, you say enough of it to make God come into the picture, then you change the end bit, and anybody into witchcraft, Satanism, or the occult understands that Bill Clinton is involved in this system. What the verse really says is this, say it with me: "Eye has not seen, ear has not heard, neither has it entered into the heart of man the things that God has prepared for them that love him." And so Bill Clinton has revealed himself as being a one world government man, and he will go along with the plan to introduce this thing, get rid of the sovereignty of the United States of America, so that America can be included in the New World Order. Now, I'm going to stick my neck out tonight. I'll give you a prophecy. I'm going to speak ahead of time. If Bill Clinton stays in the job, it'll be well. If he doesn't, say something goes wrong and he displeases his masters, he will go, and in comes the next man, whose name is Al Gore. Now, Al Gore is a new age man. He is very, very fond of environmentalism. He is a man who promotes the sort of almost the worship of Earth and Mother Gaia. And therefore, you can expect to see this man being very, very powerfully used in the days ahead. Bill Clinton or Al Gore, whoever stays in power as the president, will have to do the following. Listen, they will have to cancel or suspend the Constitution of the United States of America, because you cannot possibly include America in the New World Order as long as they have a constitution like that that separates them from the rest of the world. Now, some of you may know that there was a man called Oliver North. Who has heard of Oliver North? Oliver North was questioned during the Senate hearings, and this is what they said to him. I have a copy of the video at home, and they said, "Colonel North, were you at any time involved in a plan to suspend the Constitution of the United States of America?" He was just about to answer, and the man in charge of the committee, his name was Inouye, I think his name, from Hawaii, the senator from Hawaii, said, "We will not answer that question, Senator." And the senator who asked the question came from Texas. He said, "We will deal with this question quietly later on, for this is a matter of national security." Oliver North was not allowed to answer the question, was he involved in a plan to suspend the Constitution of the United States? So anybody here tonight who has links with the United States of America, you're going to be shocked very soon to see the Constitution suspended and the whole thing changed around to make way for the United States of America to link up with the New World Order. Now, many of you would not know, but George Bush was a member of a highly secret group called the Order, which comes out of Yale University, called the Skull and Bones. A man called Anthony Sutton wrote a book or two on the subject. One of his books is called The Order by Anthony Sutton, and there you will see the Skull and Bones, or 322, and they follow the policies of German philosophy because it is a German secret society. Now, anybody who's into German politics or German history will know that they follow the philosophies of two great men, and I refer to Kant and Hegel. And Hegel is the one we're speaking about now, because this is the one the Order follows. Remember, the ex-president of the United States belonged to an alien society called the Skull and Bones, went on to join a group called the Order, and they follow the philosophies of a German philosopher called Hegel. It is called the Hegelian Dialectic. Let me read to you, I'll put it on the board for you so you can see it, from this man Anthony Sutton's book, The Meaning of the Hegelian Dialectic. He says, in history, you must always have two forces working against each other. You have one which is called thesis, and the other one antithesis, or antithesis, you see. So what they do is this: they follow this thought: all historical events emerge from a conflict between opposing forces, says Hegel. Now, what does that mean? You could not introduce the New World Order without a battle. They needed to have a conflict. So where did they set up the conflict? Answer, in the Middle East. Who was the man they used? A man called Saddam Hussein. And if you read my book PS, which is coming out tomorrow night, you will read in there how that the Russians sent a man down called General Makashov to speak to Saddam Hussein before he invaded Kuwait. And he said to him, you move into Kuwait, nothing will go wrong, all will be well, don't worry about a thing. At the same time, the Americans sent in a woman called April Glaspie. And we were in the States at the time. The Congress interviewed this woman, and they said to her, what advice did you give to Saddam Hussein? And she said, I told him, Arab problem, Arab solution. Now, what does that mean? It means that's your problem, you settle it your way, America probably will not be involved in this thing. That's what he thought. And so poor old Saddam Hussein, not understanding what's going on, moves into Kuwait. He is immediately attacked by the international forces of the world for the first time in history. Exactly as Hegel says, there can be no change in history without a conflict, and Saddam Hussein was the catalyst that set off the New World Order. And therefore you understand that's why they didn't kill Saddam Hussein. Why didn't they get rid of him? They brushed away the cobwebs, but they left the spider. And so the answer is this: they may have to use him again, because that man is a useful tool in the hands of the New World Order people. Now you say, can you prove what you're saying tonight? Answer, yes. Who's heard of a man called Robert Maxwell? He's the man who fell off his yacht. Do you remember that? Robert Maxwell. Who's heard of a man called, who was the ex-prime minister of this country that drowned or went missing at sea? What's his name? Harold Holt. I met a man in Queensland one day and he told me, he said, have you heard this? He said, I've just heard the other day that the same frogman that murdered Harold Holt is the same frogman that got Robert Maxwell. I said, really? I said, where did you hear that? He said, I was talking to Elvis Presley in the supermarket this morning. I am now going to put on a cutting from one of Robert Maxwell's newspapers. The name of the paper is The European, and here it is. It's called Old New World Order, The European, on the 14th to the 16th of June 1991. This newspaper is saying what I have been saying for years, and at last it is out in public. I will read it to you. Yale's founding slogan is Novus Ordo Seclorum, which means New World Order. The president is known to be a keen Yalie, full of school spirit, and endures a good deal of teasing about his membership of the Skull and Bones. There it is. It's in the newspaper at last. One day, shortly, you will wake up and cash will be cancelled, and it will say, everybody go to your bank and pick up your plastic card. At that stage, many people will jump into the Georges River because they cannot stand the thought of living without cash. Here's the bad news. That was good news in comparison with what you're going to hear now. Any money you have saved up at this point will not be credited to your new account. They will start again as they did in Germany in 1948. The people there were using a form of currency called the Reichmark, the Hitler currency, but as they studied the economy in Bonn, they said that a cancellation of the old system would be the best approach to starting all over again. There was no warning to the populace in Germany 1948. The newspaper had it in headlines there, Reichmark cancelled. And all these dear people had a lot of money, many of them had a lot of money, they lost it overnight, and everybody went to the bank the next morning and were given 40 Deutschmarks to start again with. Now, if you were a poor man, you were delighted. You were now the owner of 40 Deutschmarks. If you were a rich man who had lost 1,000,000 marks or whatever, you then bought a pistol with your 40 Deutschmarks for blowing your brains out. Because if you don't know Jesus Christ, all you've got left is suicide. Now, some of you in the